Hey, give this man a double wild turkey neat, and I'll have a triple of the same, eh? Hey, Dino! How you going? Come over here, mate. Have a line with me. Hey. Hey. How's that?
Pretty fucking pure, man, thanks.
No worries. I'm a generous man. But we need to talk.
I know. It's a bit slow.
There's a limit to what I can tolerate, Dino. You and your dumb friend over there are into me for 40 large. And you're both fucking idiots if you think I'm gonna let this thing slide.
Oh, come on, man. Carl's been shifting so much product, he's flooded the market. I just need some time.
You've been watching too many movies, mate. Your problems are not my fucking problems. I just want my money.
Give us another week, Charlie. Hey, you can wear it. You got 10 grand you tracked out along the bar. What do you fucking care?
I don't fucking care. 2 days. Then we go to war. You got 2 days. Now get the fuck out of here, huh? Start selling before you get hurt.
You wanna go to fucking war, old man?
Come on, Dino, man, let's go.
Get the fuck out of here, boy.
Come on, he's not worth it.
2 days!
That old bastard. Who the fuck does he think he is?
It's Matt Charlie, that's who he is. You're gonna have to pay him, mate. He'll come after you.
Fuck paying him. I know where the cunt lives.
Hey, this is Matt Charlie you're talking about, mate. He knocked off more blokes than you knocked off chicks.
Oh, fuck. I don't care who he is. Okay, it's either me or him, and it might as well be him. I'm knocking him tonight.
Where?
His house.
He'll never do it. He's got security up his ass.
Just watch me. All right, let's go.
Hey, mate. This is a big step, mate.
Mate, I'm a big guy. You fucking old bastard. You want a fucking war? I'll give you a fucking war. War's over, Charlie. You lose.
Meet Dino Dibra, the Sunshine Boy, savage gangster at 13, jailed at 19, a killer at 23, and dead by 25. Tonight we delve into the facts behind the fiction and discover the truth about Melbourne gangster Dino Dibra. Dibra was a man in a hurry. In his teens, he was blood brothers with a gang of thugs, including notorious future killer Andrew Benji Veneman. He was a violent and volatile drug dealer involved in murder, extortion and kidnapping. Tonight, through dramatised scenes, first-hand accounts and detailed analysis of his life and crimes, we meet a reckless, ruthless thug who died at the end of his best friend's gun.
Dino Dibra was a violent gangster wannabe. That's all he ever wanted to be, was a gangster.
I'm gonna be the godfather. Don Dino.
There's a number of statements in history that we discount. The checks in the mail and honour amongst thieves. There's no such thing.
Dino Dibra was a young, gun-crazy, deluded menace to society, really.
A gun down your pants, you could be a big shot too. And Dino was convinced that he'll be the biggest shot of them all.
When you've got bloody lunatics all on this and that and whatever, you've got to be on your toes.
He was a man who would shoot anyone dead for no reason at all. He was an absolute criminal lunatic.
Between 1998 and August 2010, 36 criminal figures were murdered in Melbourne as rival gangs battled it out for control over the city's lucrative underworld. Dibra's gang, the Sunshine Boys, wanted their share of the spoils. For these young guns, extreme violence was always the first option, and when the smoke finally cleared, nearly a third of the 36 deaths were blamed on the Sunshine Boys or were Sunshine Boys themselves.
Well, this was Scarface in the suburbs, you know. He was part of a small team of guys who were all together in high school, even earlier than that, who believed they were going to be the biggest team in Australia, and they end up falling to murder and double-cross and subterfuge.
Look, he was just a young Albanian kid that would be gangster, want to be gangster. He was living the dream there for a while. He made enough money to start living the dream.
He was brash, he was bold, he was over the top, he was full of juice. He'd pull a gun as soon as he'd, scratch his nose. And he'd use it to benefit himself.
BERT WROUT is one of the few survivors of the Melbourne Gangland War, having been shot and nearly killed in 2004.
We were another generation. Now these kids come along, made their money through drugs, did their business, fueled their drugs, made a huge impact. But then, how long did they last before someone knocked them or they stepped on someone's toes? They were flash in the pans, but they were vicious. They had no scruples.
Only just out of his teens, Dibra already had a long police record and was into everything: drugs, car rebirthing, theft, extortion and assaulting police. He was a gangster in a hurry, and according to forensic psychologist Stephen Barron, took his biggest step on November the 23rd, 1988, when he murdered Mad Charlie Hegeley.
Dino aspires to be a modern-day gangster. In other words, he can do, within reason, whatever he wants to do. And being part of the underworld allows multiple opportunities to do that. You can earn obscene amounts of money by drug distribution. You can start running your own crews. You can start becoming a small cog in a larger machine. But in the end, it comes down to street credibility. Killing someone else who has openly threatened him, openly chastised him, openly embarrassed him, would simply encourage him to go the next step.
Well, he developed his nickname, Mad Charlie, after biting someone's nose off in a fight when he was a younger man. Basically, he was a man who had no compunction, no remorse. He was extremely violent and had that reputation amongst the criminal underworld in Melbourne.
He's tied up with businessmen, and he was tied up in the drug scene, and most probably he would be one of the most willing blokes you'd come across.
If basically someone challenged him, he would produce a gun, he would shoot that person. So when Dino Dibra came across Mad Charlie, there was only one way it was going to end. Either Mad Charlie was going to shoot Dino, or Dino was going to shoot Mad Charlie.
He had spent a massive session out in a few pubs down around Caulfield and St Kilda.
Hey, give this man a double wild turkey neat, and I'll have a triple of the same, eh?
And was getting rather loud and belligerent with his group, and had been asked, I think, to leave a couple of pubs. According to phone records, Mad Charlie phoned Dino Dibra.
Hey, Dino! How you going? Come over here, mate, have a line with me.
It's an absolute fluke and freak of nature that he was clever enough to sneak go Mad Charlie. Charlie would have filled him full of lead had he had a second's drop on him.
Look, he lost his head, he lost his awareness. His house was very secure, very fortified. Someone still managed to lie in wait and ambush him as he arrived home that night.
You want a fucking whore? I'll give you a fucking whore.
He was just hidden in the bushes, and Charlie must have just had a little bit too much to drink. He shouldn't drink in hotels, Charlie. People that drink in hotels and get drunk in hotels end up dying.
You lose.
He received several shots to the head and died on his pathway, where I think his wife saw him in their video monitor when she awoke the next morning.
Forensic psychologist Sandy Ray believes Dibra would have been excited about making his first kill.
He would have loved it, because this is his chance to prove what a big boy he is. He would have been absolutely on. And that's what part of the gang behaviour is. I've got to prove myself, and here's my chance to show you I can go up to the next level.
Once you've decided that people don't matter, outside of a very small group of people, everybody else is just them, it's not really all that important whether they live or die.
I would suggest that it's probably something they saw in the movies. It's only a question of being patient, having the right weapon and being patient. And, Charlie was careless, and all careless people end up in the cemetery.
Dibra was born to an Albanian Muslim family in 1975 and grew up in the Melbourne suburb of Sunshine, a multicultural melting pot settled by immigrants from as far afield as Europe, South America, Sudan, Burma and India. Sunshine boomed for years, but as manufacturing declined in the 1970s, unemployment rose, leaving behind massive socio-economic disadvantage and creating a generation of kids who grew up in poverty.
They grew up there. Often their parents didn't speak very good English. Dino's parents certainly didn't. I've met them, and they struggle a bit with English and so forth. So you have these situations where these boys are more adept at being Australians because they have mixed in school. They've mixed in the streets and the sporting fields and so forth. So they're more adept at being Australian, if you like, than their parents.
Well, Sunshine's just a western suburb shithole. They all got around Sunshine. They would have grown up together, playing Space Invaders together, going to the movies together. Everyone saw Scarface in Sunshine. They all saw Scarface, the movie. Everyone pretended they were Tony Montana.
In Sunshine, where the demographic is a large immigrant population, the children of those immigrant families often find their own ways of establishing relationships. For Dino, it's about being part of the gang. And these kids, these boys get together, they express shared values, and they start building this small gang based on shared values of brotherhood. And that's what Dino does.
Dibra's gang was made up of friends from primary and secondary school, including Andrew Benji Veneman, who would later kill multiple times, and Mark Malia, who became a feared drug dealer and enforcer. The boys were mentored by convicted killer and martial arts champion Paul Kallipolitis.
One thing you could say, school teachers don't get paid enough money to have 4 people like that in their class, do they? Who knows what brings them together other than a common interest, and that common interest was crime, and it evolved into violent crime.
Kallipolitis was trained in martial arts. He was a ferocious fighter, a very violent human being, and it was he who basically established the apprenticeships for these very serious criminal figures.
And he was getting involved in hydroponic marijuana, car rebirthing, different things like that. And these boys were willing helpers to that. And so they idolised him, and they would do anything for him, you know.
Forensic psychologist David Mutton believes the development of Dibra's gang followed a classic pattern.
Youth gangs only flourish when there is an older person there guiding them. They rarely exist in a vacuum. They rarely exist by their own. So they would certainly need someone like Paul to be able to guide them, to encourage them. To start with, they would probably commit fairly lower level antisocial sort of crimes, and then it would escalate into assaults and then robberies. So they need an older person, a bit of a Svengali there to manage that process, to bring this out of them.
Dibra's gang were from mixed ethnic and religious backgrounds. Dibra was Muslim Albanian, Benji Veneman was Greek Cypriot, and Mark Malia was Maltese. However, under the guidance of Paul Kallipolitis, they would soon become blood brothers.
This is how the mafia does it.
Ouch. Does it hurt?
Nah. When they make a guy new member, they draw blood, swear by the rules, and they're baptized. You know, in the mafia.
Fuck the mafia.
PK said we should do this together.
PK's Greek. We don't need to follow the Italians.
We put you in charge, Benji.
I'm not in charge. I just want to do it our way. PK would too. Hold out your hands. No, left hand, closest to your heart. There are 3 rules. 1 in, all in.
One in, all in.
Piece of shit!
Rule number 2.
Always chop in your brothers.
Always chop in your brothers. Rule number 3, Dino.
Never betray a brother.
Never betray a brother. If any of us breaks these rules, they'll break the blood bond and be cast out forever.
We're brothers now. We'll never be defeated. We're gonna take over this fucking city and live like those rich Torak bastards.
I guess it must have seemed almost like innocent fun at times, you know, taking on local shopkeepers, fights at school. When they're all in school together, they'd walk into the classroom in designer tracksuits, and the teacher would say, well, you'll never amount to anything. They'd say, well, we already are, you know. We're already on our way. We're going to be the biggest team, and you watch us and all this kind of stuff.
School times impeded their progress in crime. They'd be out most probably stealing from letterboxes, parked cars, and they'd be making sometimes more money than their father would make in one shift at a factory.
Colopolitis knew that there would be tensions and dramas between them. So it was much better to share the spoils, even if it came down to women or drugs or whatever it was, you chopped your mates in.
Rule number 2.
Always chop in your brothers.
That created bonds between them. And also, if you had a criminal opportunity and one of them wasn't in it, well, he might just turn around and lag you as well.
The Sunshine Boys were children of the 20th century and had absorbed all the gangster imagery they'd seen on TV and at the cinema.
Blood rituals have been around for generations, and they often come from more primitive societies, and it often means things like the death of the old life and the rebirth of the new life. Now, I think with gangs in the 20th century, I think it's just the one big cliche. They've seen it on the television, they've seen it on the movies, and they want to be like them. And so I think it's a cliche of, yeah, we're in a gang now, let's exchange blood.
If any of us breaks these rules, they'll break the blood bond and be cast out forever.
They were a real handful at school. They were all asked to leave. At this time, they were involved in car rebirthing rackets as the years went by, but still as teenagers. Dibra, Venyman, Malia, they were involved in basically setting up hydroponic cannabis growing in homes. Routinely take $40,000 a year out of a house that was just growing pot.
By his mid-teens, Dibra and his gang were well and truly on the police radar. By 16, he was facing theft and reckless driving charges, and one officer who tussled with him during an arrest had his car blown up shortly after. Former detective Brian Murphy believes there's only one way to deal with criminals like Dino Dibra.
These blokes only respect superior force. They're like animals. If you get a dog that's uncontrollable, you either can train it or you've got to use force on it to behave itself. You've got to get right up in their face, you've got to tell them what the rules are, and if they break the rules, you break them.
Former underworld figure Chopper Reed believes in even swifter justice.
You see a 16-year-old kid get around with gold chains and a handgun, you shoot him. You don't let him become 17. You know, he's got a loaded handgun and he's 16, he's walking around swinging it around the place, well, you go pop. You know, it doesn't matter that he's 16, it's too bad for you. You know, you don't let him become 17. You know?
In 1992, Dibra picked up his first conviction for resisting police and escaping lawful custody. A year later, he was charged with a number of offences, including reckless conduct, endangering life, and reckless and unlicensed driving. For Dibra and the Sunshine Boys, crime was a joke, and getting caught was just part of the fun. But if Dibra was ever to become a real gangster, it was time to start looking beyond Sunshine.
Look, Melbourne back then, like most major cities around the Western world, had various groups of people who liked to think they controlled various geographical areas. As always happens, greed takes over, and one or two of the small-time players decides to pick their own team and muscle in, and you end up with a turf war.
In the 90s, I suppose, mid-90s, things like that, drugs were becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. The younger gang got into drugs. With that come all the drama, the brutality, whatever you want to call it, and things became a hell of a lot more messed up then.
In an effort to become serious players in Melbourne, Dibra and his gang started hanging around with a notorious Carlton gangster, Alphonse Gadgetano. Gadgetano already had at least one murder to his name and was part of a loose confederation of criminals and other men with serious reputations. They included Jason and Mark Moran and their father Lewis, Graham Kinniber, and Dominic Mick Gatto.
Dino Dibra I first met up in Carlton. He used to knock around with Alphonse and his entourage. He was being used by them to do a lot of their dirty work. He wanted to ingratiate himself with the Carlton crew. At that time it was Alphonse and his stooges, and he thought to become a part of it, he would practically do anything for them. And they paid him a wage every now and then, and he was quite happy with that. And he'd go back to the western suburbs and tell them all how lucky he was to be a friend of Alphonse's.
Despite his new powerful friends, Dibra never forgot his blood brothers.
They felt 10 foot tall and bulletproof when they were together. Particularly Veneman and Dibra branched off and started a cannabis cartel, and they were making a lot of money out of that. They were also involved in a lot of gunplay. There were a hell of a lot of kneecappings going on. Anyone who stood in their way, they'd pretty much use violence and extortion to profit and rule those western suburbs.
One night, 1994, Veneman and Dibra were cruising around Port Melbourne looking for a car to steal for their rebirthing racket. Rebirthing was easy money. The boys would buy a wreck at auction, then steal an identical vehicle to cannibalise for parts, and soon the wreck would be miraculously reborn. For the boys, it was a normal job until they discovered the car they'd stolen belonged to a policeman.
It all started when Benji and Dino were asked to fill an order for a car rebirthing operation for a VN Calais Holden. They found one in Port Melbourne, they stole it, not realising it was actually an off-duty policeman's car, which had a laptop computer in the boot. Benji was all for selling it to the Carlton crew because this would be useful information for gangsters who wanted to know about police. But Dino wanted to make a big scene. He wanted to make a big show. So they got the address of a prominent undercover police officer and drove past his house one day. The family was out there in the front yard and so forth, and they waved to this copper, slow royal wave, and that was the beginning of the end of their relationship. From there, they were picked up, they were put in the cell with another man who Dino began to boast about what they'd done. He was, in fact, an undercover policeman or informer, and so they were busted.
When Veneman received 12 months jail and Dibra got less, it appeared to the Sunshine Boys that Dibra had indeed ratted them out.
So this was now a great wedge between the group. And they had sworn that they were going to be the biggest team in Australia, but now it was going to be poisonous. This toxic environment just got worse and worse.
The gang were convinced Dibra had broken one of the most sacred rules. Revenge would be bloody and extreme.
I'll put it to you now that you're a fucking dog who shot me to the jacks.
That's bullshit.
And you'd do it again if you had the chance.
I hate the jacks as much as you do.
I got 12 months for jacking that car, and you got a slap on the wrist.
They kicked the shit out of me, and I still said nothing. I still got a lump on the back of my skull.
Well, how come I got 12 months, you dog?
I had a good judge. You had a hard ass. What else can I say?
Fess up, Dino. You dogged him.
Now you tell me why I shouldn't put a couple into you.
I fucking dare you, Veneman. I'm a big wheel now. You wouldn't last 5 minutes.
You're an idiot. We could be top crew in Melbourne now, bigger than Gangitanos, but you fucked that.
No, I never.
Shut up. We had a bond and you broke it.
Bullshit.
Never betray a brother. You betrayed us all, you cocksucker. You gotta knock him. If you don't kill this prick, he's gonna back up on us.
Come on, mate. Mate, we've known each other since grade 4.
Do it. If he had his toe on him, he'd blow us both away in a second.
Benji, we're brothers.
I'm gonna have to shoot you, mate. I can't let you get away with what you did.
You prick! Untie me!
One more.
No, mate, please.
You broke the bond, you dog. Drive him to the hospital.
What's this? A taxi service for fucking dogs?
Just fucking drive him.
Benji, you know this prick's gonna back up on us.
We'll see.
Who needs enemies when you've got friends like they had? It was like a nest of vipers. They'd turn on each other. They were kneecapping each other. They were kneecapping other people. And it grew to a point where they all got so big that they couldn't coexist within their group.
Benji decided he had to do something about Dino, under pressure from other people. So they grabbed him one day. There was a kangaroo court, and Benji walked around like the QC he'd seen people do in court and so forth. And he said to Dibra, well, you know, you're a dog. You have to pay the price now.
Benji, we're brothers.
I'm gonna have to shoot you, mate. I can't let you get away with what you did.
Others on the scene urged Benji to kill him at that moment.
You gotta knock him. If you don't kill this prick, he's gonna back up on us.
But he wouldn't do it because the bonds of friendship were still there. Benji really hadn't fully matured into what he would become, which was pretty much a heartless killer. So Dino was spared.
Drive him to the hospital.
What's this? A taxi service for fucking dogs?
Just fucking drive him.
Dibra's arrogant boasting had inadvertently destroyed the bonds of blood and trust that kept the gang together.
The establishment of the gang was about mutual trust and recognition, but also about mutual recognition about each other's having a part of the gang, shared measure of the gang. But the difficulty arises as soon as one gang member thinks that Dino, for example, is giving information in return for a softer sentence or no prosecution, the trust is gone.
Their personalities are ones that are fairly out of control anyway, and so it's only a matter of time when the tensions within the gang are going to make the gang fall apart. They're living for the moment, they're having a great lot of fun, a lot of adrenaline, a lot of stimulation. All that draws them together, but also at the same time it's a force that is probably tearing them apart as well.
You broke the bond, you dog.
Now, there's no place in this world for wimps, so you're going to have to be pretty full on in order for people to treat you with any respect, and that's one of the key issues in that group, would be this concept of respect, that you have to respect me, and the only way to respect me is to know what happens to you if you don't.
You prick!
In late 1996, after a string of traffic offences, Dibra was finally sentenced to 18 months imprisonment and given a 5-year driving ban. He was condemned for having one of the worst driving records the magistrate had ever seen. Prison did nothing to curb Dibra's ways, and he was back terrorising the streets again by mid-1997, racking up further convictions for unlicensed and careless driving and failing to answer bail.
When you go to jail, you meet up with other hardened criminals, which it's like a college, the college of knowledge. And for Dino, it was about cementing relationships with people. It was about being in the right team and so forth. And when he came out, he was ready to go. And Paul Catapulaitis, I believe, helped him set up again in the hydro business, doing marijuana. So there was a car for him, there was money, there was a shack to do his hydro in.
Hydroponic cannabis was a lucrative business, but Dibra quickly realised there was far more money to be made dealing synthetic drugs. He also started dabbling himself, dangerous entertainment for someone with unlimited access to drugs. Paul Dillon has worked in the drug education field for almost 25 years.
One of the main problems that drug distribution networks have is that many of the drugs are provided in crops. So we have cannabis, cocaine and heroin that are all linked to plant material. The group of synthetic drugs that don't have a crop cycle are the amphetamine group, which of course, if you can manufacture them all year round, you're going to increase your profit margins.
Synthetic drug use in Melbourne exploded at the turn of the century as the dance music revolution hit. Two of the city's biggest players were the Moran brothers, Jason and Mark. They were also responsible for bringing a young Carl Williams into the drug business.
Williams was handed a speed factory. He was handed control of a fucking speed. You might as well just gone along and got the local retard and put him in charge. Here's the keys to a speed factory. And press that button and $250,000 will come out the other end. And he was only making Jason Moran's stuff for 2 days a week, and he was making his own stuff for the other 2 days a week. And Jason Moran couldn't figure it out.
It's now well documented how they fell out. Jason, Mark and Carl. Jason popped Carl in the stomach, and Carl had an overriding hatred and wanted revenge. Carl ended up in the boob over various things, hooked up with all the junkies, armed robbers, etc., etc. Shitmen is what I call them, absolute shitmen.
Williams, who had been a bit player in another organisation, for want of a better term, who decided he was destined for bigger and better things. And, of course, we all know what ultimately happened to him. He didn't get to cash in his superannuation either.
A wannabe gangster like Dibra would have been irresistibly drawn to players like the Morans and Carl Williams, particularly as he had begun to wear out his welcome with Alphonse Gadgetano and the Carlton crew. Dibra had discovered cocaine, a drug which made him even more reckless and volatile than usual. Money and drugs were sending the boys who'd sworn lifelong fidelity their separate ways.
Cracks started to splinter the group, and they started finding different allegiances. Veneman was very much attracted to the Carlton crew.
Benji had made it his life's work to be part of the Carlton crew. He'd made a connection through another guy who had business in Sunshine, so he was now ingratiated into the system. But he was respectful. He regarded the people he was meeting, like Mick Gatto and so forth, as father figures. He wanted to be close to them. He was full of respect.
I think Dibra still felt some sort of affinity with his local friends and a new up-and-coming group that was being run by Carl Williams.
And he starts to build relationships with gangsters who have real credentials, real street credentials, the Radevs and the Williamses. But in essence, those people are using him for what he provides, and that is a distribution point. He thinks that he has a status in this big gang, and unfortunately, he is simply just being used.
As one of Williams' lieutenants, Dibra began dealing in Melbourne's clubs. But he was using almost as much coke as he was selling and beginning to lose what little control he had left.
Oh. The world is fucking mine. I'm on a roll, man. I'm gonna be #1 in this fucking town. Yeah. I'm moving Carl's gear by the truckload, man. It's selling like fucking a hot shit. Them Carlton boys love me. And any other bastard who gets in the way gets this. I'm gonna be the godfather. Don Dino.
Oh, I'm not kissing you on the ring, man.
You're Fredo, mate. You dumb prick. I'm the Don and you're fucking Fredo.
Nah, man, Fredo died. He gets like wasted on the lake in the second movie.
Yeah. He's cool. That's the way it's gotta be. Anyone that gets in the way is fucked. Don Dino takes no fucking...
prisoners, man.
No! Shit. Not from no one, huh? Not from you, not from Carl, not from those plastic mafia boys down in Carlton. I'm gonna be the boss of everyone, man. Everyone.
See, that's what Alphonse said, and look at him now. He's like fertilizing the daisies.
Genjitano was a weak cunt. No fucking dash.
Bull's ass, man. He had a ton of dash. He was just like fucking stupid.
Shut the fuck up, Fredo.
Just easy on Fredo, man.
I'll call you whatever I want, Fredo.
He was on the coke. He was full of bravado, full of confidence. He would say anything, do anything. There were incidents where he was on the coke. He would get police officers to chase him just for the fun of it, you know?
I think the same thing probably did happen that happened in most of the groups. They all got to like their own product too much. It was there for the taking. Money was no object, and I think their brains all got stuffed with the drugs.
The world is fucking mine.
Cocaine will make him detached, delusional, paranoid, no doubt entering psychotic episodes, what we call derealisation of perspective. It depersonalises more and more what is going on in their world. I guess their tolerance for violence just increases and increases.
Heavy cocaine use meant Dibra was also beginning to lose what little connection he had with real life. The line between fantasy and reality was becoming increasingly blurred.
I'm told that Dibra's bedroom was filled with movie posters. One scene that summed him up perfectly was when he walked out of Melbourne Magistrates Court one day and told us that he just watched Reservoir Dogs one too many times. And that was the sort of dream world in which he was living. You know, he probably thought he was Mr. Blonde and he could just run right and get away with things.
High on drugs and his own self-belief, Dibra's recklessness was rapidly making him enemies.
He just had no fear. He had no fear of members of the underworld. He had no fear of members of Victoria Police. He built a reputation within the nightclub scene as a feared thug.
A guy like Dino felt he was a boss. He was going to be much bigger than them, therefore he didn't need to show respect.
I'm going to be the boss of everyone, man. Everyone.
This started to push these guys apart as well, that Benji could no longer afford to have a guy like Dino around. I mean, there was a classic example in 1998 at the Dome nightclub in Paran. Dino was with a group of people that ended up shooting a bouncer there and maiming him. And this caused a huge amount of drama and for no good reason.
Whoever had hold of the gun popped 2 bouncers at close range, miraculously didn't kill them. I think one bouncer copped a round in the leg, another bouncer copped a round in his abdomen.
So, you know, people can be afraid of you, but in the long term, someone's going to round on you.
1998 turned out to be a big year for a young gangster building a serious reputation. Dibra had made his first kill and had been a ringleader in the Dome nightclub shooting. He was also gaining a group of new followers ready to fight or shoot on his command. And Dibra's old ties of blood were still holding. In 1999, police received information he was back working with childhood friend Benji Venom.
This information comes from a secret police report that was submitted when they wanted to start up the investigation into Dino Dibra and Andrew Veneman's cannabis cartel. The police report described Dibra and Veneman as, quote, 2 of Sunshine's most notorious criminals. Both Dibra and Veneman have significant violent criminal histories. They were both involved in shooting incidents and numerous hydroponic cannabis crop houses in the Sunshine sub-district.
Journalist and author Adam Shand understands how a gang like the Sunshine Boys can break up and reunite despite betrayal and violence.
Like all these friendships, they're very conditional. And your enemy yesterday could be your friend tomorrow if there was $1 in it. Or you had common cause against a third party. It was very confusing. It was a game of 3-dimensional chess. These boys didn't play chess, but if they did, that's the way it was. People were colliding with each other on different planes, if you like. It got to the stage where other people were saying to Benji, well, you've called this bloke a dog, but you're hanging out with him now. What's that about?
Venom and Dibra's new hydroponics venture didn't last long. In March, police raided Dibra's home and found a cannabis crop and 2 loaded guns. He received bail on the condition that he report twice daily to police. Despite being under police surveillance, by May, Dibra had returned to his hydroponic cannabis business. Always reckless, in August he decided to kidnap standover man, Mad Richard Miladnich, in broad daylight.
He was the loudest bloke in Pensridge. I took the top of his head off with a garden spade, like that. And I took the top of his skull right off like that, lifted it up, you see the brain. And he said he fell over and hit his head on a rock, and that's how he... And so they said to him, well, if you're not prepared to make a statement against Chopper Reed, we're not prepared to take it to court.
Boys, vodka, mate. How's it going?
Hey, look at here. Spade brain.
You caught up with Chopper Reed yet, mate? Maybe he'll give you a scalp back.
No, they can sew it back on. You know, the docs can do one this next day.
Hey, boys, watch your fucking mouths, eh?
Yeah?
Shit, yeah. You know I'm with the Morans.
Bullshit.
Hey, I'm looking after Mark, making sure he doesn't come to any grief from shit men like you.
So where's Mark? He give you the day off?
I'm on 24-hour call. Looking to get on now. A little bit of Lou Reed, Charlie. If there's any gun, you boys can.
8 ball for 5 ounce. Come to the car. Hey, you're not looking for a piece, are you? We've got some 9mm action going on. Real quality shooters.
Yeah. You could pistol whip a cunt all day long and it'd still fire straight as a die.
Show me.
It's in the boot.
See the box there? Right behind the wheel. Yeah, just in there. Make him stop, move it! Get the cuffs on him. Oh, he's a strong cunt. What the fuck do you think you're doing?
Didn't you hear him? He's a bodyguard for the Morans.
Yeah, I fucking heard him. I don't want the Morans after me.
No. We're holding for ransom. The Morans are fucking loaded.
Fuck! I thought you boys were gonna let me chop up. Fuck!
Fucking spilled the blow everywhere, you idiot!
All right, just pull up over here. I'll try to tidy it up. How much do you think Mick's gonna pay for him?
I don't know. Oh, he's fucking gone! Okay, we're officially stuffed.
80 grand too much?
He told me to get fucked.
He say anything about me?
He said, if he ever sees either of us ever again, we're both off.
What about him?
He doesn't need a bodyguard. And even if he did, why would he get this junkie on board?
You fucking lied to me, you prick.
This was amateur hour, this kidnap, and it showed exactly what sort of clowns and maniacs these guys were. I mean, they've kidnapped this guy in broad daylight, punched him, kicked him, pistol whipped him, barreled him into a boot.
He's been in a boot before because he realises there's an emergency opening switch and pops the boot and jumps out. So they stop the car, and this is in Footscray Road, full daylight, people watching, and they chase the bloke, give him a few biffos and stick him back in the boot, and off they go. And they think, well, what do we do with him now? What do they do in the movies? Oh, well, they ring up and they ransom him.
80 grand too much?
He told me to get fucked.
When they get no joy, they bring it down, and suddenly it's 5,000,
Little did they know was that the police had the house bugged because of the Dome nightclub incident and that investigation. I mean, they just had no forethought. They had no idea about police tactics or techniques or the police ability to get onto crooks and then investigate them.
And in the end, the police storm the place, and poor old Mladenic is there, and he gets released, and the whole thing is a complete joke.
Who did he think was going to pay the ransom? What drugs was Dibra taken that told him that there was any money involved in Mladenovic? If you're going to kidnap anyone on earth, why would you kidnap Richard Mladenovic?
Why would he get this junkie on board?
You fucking lied to me, you prick.
Forensic psychologist David Mutton believes Dibra's behaviour indicates he may have been a psychopath.
Psychopathic people often don't care about the future. It's living for the moment and needing to be stimulated for the moment, because these sort of characters need a lot of stimulation.
Dino shows in his behaviour, even from a young boy, the inability to problem solve, the inability to plan. All his crimes are crimes of impulse, they're crimes of opportunity. He doesn't think of the consequences.
I think from his adolescent days, he was probably addicted to excitement, he was addicted to adrenaline, he was addicted to impulse, and maybe this was the flowering of that in his adulthood.
Dino Dibra and 2 other men were charged with the kidnapping and assault of Richard Mladenic. But the insanity continued. In May 2000, Dibra became prime suspect after Richard Mladenic was murdered. Then only 2 months later, Dibra was involved in a gun-crazy road rage incident where a motorist was shot 5 times. By the start of the new millennium, the gangland wars in Melbourne were in full flight. As the bodies piled up, there was an ever-increasing need for guns for hire. Andrew Benji Veneman became one of the go-to killers, happy to work for whichever gang could afford him. Despite his blood brother's growing reputation as a killer, Dibra believed he had nothing to fear.
Benji was a psycho. He was a complete, utter psycho. Benji swapped sides, changed sides. They didn't really know where they were, but the one thing they could do was walk up behind you and put a bullet in your head.
Benji Benjamin, if he was an inch shorter, he'd make a good circus dwarf. It was a 2-bob little flea. I didn't have much time for him. He was a fucking wombat. He was on Carl Williams' side one day, he was on Mick Gatto's side the next. He couldn't make up what side of the fence he was on,
There was a time back then where Certainly amongst some areas of the community and even some police officers, the whole episode was referred to the self-cleaning oven because they were cleaning up themselves. And unfortunately, there are innocent people impacted by a lot of this as well. Had it just been them having the gunfight at the OK Corral out in an enclosed space somewhere, it would have saved a whole lot of drama for everyone.
That same year saw the final demise of the Sunshine Boys. Dibra had demanded loyalty from Veneman in a petty spat with another member of the gang, but he had overplayed his hand, and Veneman and the Sunshine Boys' old mentor, Paul Kalapalaitis, decided not to back Dibra. Forensic psychologist Wendy Northey thinks that Dibra wasn't completely oblivious to what was happening around him.
I think there is that element amongst career criminals that, you know, they're here for a good time, not necessarily a long time. I think at some subconscious level they make that choice. Many of them must realise there is a high risk that they won't make old age.
He had a shack over in Cranbrook Street, Sunshine West, which was known only to his close associates. He would go there to chill out with his friends, do business, a bit of dope growing there as well. He felt that was a secure, safe haven for him. But by this time he had quite a few enemies, and he double-crossed quite a few people in his circle. He was going to go out on the town that night. They'd been to a barbecue in the afternoon with his family and so forth. Just a pretty normal day for Dino.
Maybe there was a terrible inevitability about the events of October the 14th, 2000. For the Sunshine Boys who'd forged their ties in blood, the final ending would have to be paid in blood as well.
Anyway, gentlemen, I gotta go. Huh? I got no time for lunch.
Stay. For your mother. She doesn't see much of you these days. She misses you.
Business is business, Dad.
You know the young ones? Never slow down, always rush, rush, rush.
This one will rush to his own funeral. Say goodbye to your mother and apologize. She made you favorite.
Dino, what are you going?
Ma, I gotta go.
But what, you just got here? What are you leaving so soon?
I gotta go make some money. Yeah, make you proud of me.
I'm always proud of you. Hey, Dino, you didn't bring your washing this weekend, no?
No, I've been too busy. How about I come over tonight, I bring it, we sit down, have a meal, you know, do some talking, while you're not so busy being the life of the party.
You be good boy. No more trouble with the police, huh?
See you later, Ma. Love you.
Now you're gonna die like a real gangster.
"25-year-old convicted drug trafficker Dino Dibra was gunned down execution-style outside a house in Cranbrook Street, West Sunshine. Police believe there were 3 killers. They say they know one of the gunmen, but need more information to arrest him.
Dino Dibra was ambushed outside a house in West Sunshine. He was riddled with bullets, one of those gunmen being Andrew Veneman.
It was certainly felt that it was Andrew Veneman was there. There's a possibility that Paul Kalapalaitis may have also been there. All these issues that had begun years ago in petty personal disputes were now being played out in murder. It was the total disaster and destruction of the little team.
Greg Davies believes Dibra would have known what was about to happen in the seconds before he was gunned down.
Yeah, look, you would imagine Dibra may well have known who it was who was leaning out that car window, pointing firearms at him and about to pull the trigger. And again, it's the old story of someone quicker on the draw finally confronted him at high noon.
A lot of these fellows take that as their fate. And they say, well, you know, it's come. I can't do anything about it. Get it over and done with.
Because they'd seen just this happen in Scarface, where at the beginning of the film, everyone's together, they're all mates, all on the rise. By the end, they're killing each other. So there's certainly inevitability about it.
I believe there wouldn't have been any hatred towards him in what Benji did. It was just a job. They're cold, calculating killers.
Now you're going to die like a real gangster.
To this day, Dibra's murder remains officially unsolved, with the police reward of $100,000 remaining unclaimed.
Dibra's grieving family also appealed for more information, saying they can't move on with their lives until the murder is solved.
Anyone that has any information, please come forward. That's all we ask. You have to put yourself in our position. We need some sort of closure.
The $100,000 will only be paid if information provided leads to a conviction.
After Dino's death, his parents just didn't want to believe that he'd been involved in several murders and assaults and that sort of stuff. So they wanted to believe that he was the nice, good, observant Muslim boy that he'd always been. But unfortunately, the truth was something else.
A funny story from a police officer I know who arrested him early on in his career. The police officer told him, unless you pull your head in, you'll be dead before you're 30. And of course, Dibra by that stage was believing his own publicity. He was wrapped up in his own world. He'd gotten away with so much in the western suburbs, he just didn't listen. And he ended up another tally on the underworld scoreboard.
Any notion of criminal loyalty these days is a fiction. This notion that crims stick together, to the bitter end is dead. And he would have known that. He would have known that there's no such loyalties. He's already trodden on toes. So I don't think he'd be surprised that the person who kills him may be the person that he had shared blood with at an earlier stage. In some regards, it's a rather interesting irony. The blood that he shared as an adolescent becomes the blood that he shares as the adult at the end of a gun.
Most believe Dibra met his end at the hands of lifelong friends Benji Veneman and Paul Kalapalidis. After his death, the Sunshine Boys disintegrated completely. In 2002, Veneman was the prime suspect when Paul Kalapalidis was murdered. He was also involved in the abduction, torture and killing of another of the Sunshine Boys, Mark Malia, in 2003. He himself was then killed in 2004. It was a bloody end to a lifetime of friendship, and the boys' distraught families were left trying to reconcile their memories of kids with hearts of gold with their bloody and brutal criminal lives.